The Four of Swords is about taking time to rest and recover following a difficult situation. Please join me and learn how to interpret this card when it shows up in a reading. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Allen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we'll be learning the tarot deck one card at a time. Today's video is about the Four of Swords. This video will begin with a short description of the card. Next, I'll briefly explain what the card means when it appears in a reading. Then we'll talk about what each element symbolizes and what the card means when it shows up in both the upright and reversed position in a reading. I'll share some examples from my life so you can relate to the card in a real-world situation. And stay tuned until the end and I'll give you some questions to help you connect with the card. I will be using the Rider-Waite Tarot in this video. You'll find the link to the deck below, as well as to the many books that I've used in my research. So let's get started. In the Four of Swords, we see a golden knight resting on a gold sarcophagus. He is wearing armor, although nothing on his head. His hands are folded in prayer. At the top left of the card, we see a stained glass window that shows a religious figure helping a child or a follower. To the right, we see three swords mounted above the knight. Beneath the knight is a sword. The background is gray. When this card appears in a reading, it means that you need to take time, alone, for deep rest and recovery. This is no surprise if we look at what happened in the previous card. You've been traumatized and you need time to heal. The Four of Swords can mean that it's time to slow down and relax, that it is time to shut out the external world and go inward, that you should not be rushing into anything at this point. Instead, relax, take a step back, and analyze your current situation and plan your next move, that you need to ask Spirit for help. And finally, it can indicate a hospital stay, death, or a funeral. Let's talk about the symbolism in the Four of Swords. This is a card about deep rest. The knight would be located in a tomb. Tombs were often built in caves or underground. They had thick stone walls to keep the spirits from escaping. This is significant because the knight has chosen to rest where it would be very quiet and also away from the rest of the world. This indicates that you need to find a quiet space so you can heal. The gold sarcophagus and gold knight represent enlightenment. Since he is wearing armor, it is likely that he is exhausted from battle. However, he has no helmet on, so there is no way to protect himself from his thoughts. It might also mean that his mind needs healing. The three swords above him are a reminder of the pain that occurred in the previous card. The stained glass window shows a religious figure helping a child or a follower. Some people believe this to be Jesus. However, it could also reflect the knight's code of conduct that says he must honor God, protect the weak and defenseless, and offer help to widows and orphans in times of distress. So it likely represents the knight's spiritual beliefs. We see the word pax in the halo, which is Latin for peace. The gray background represents neutrality and austerity. When the Four of Swords appears in an upright position, it is a message to take time out from your life to rest and recover. It indicates you've experienced something traumatic that you can't easily bounce back from, as shown by the Three of Swords in the previous card. This was heartbreak of some kind that impacted you deeply. As a side note, in a practical sense in the 21st century, seeking rest doesn't mean that you need to climb into a tomb for a rest break. It might just mean that you take time for a nap, meditation, or some other kind of break that will provide you the rest you need. There is always a discussion about whether the knight is dead or just resting. I believe that he is just resting. You could not hold your hands in prayer if you were dead. The position of his hands also indicates that he is in touch with God and is asking for his help. Let's look at the three swords on the wall with their tips pointing towards him. The fact that they are mounted on the wall shows that the knight has laid down most of his weapons so that he can rest. To me, this indicates that he still has issues hanging over his head. If you've ever tried meditating, which I have done many hundreds of times, you know that your mind doesn't automatically clear itself. At least mine doesn't. All of your worries don't disappear, but they keep showing up and interfering with your state of restful bliss. So I believe this card also represents the challenges of trying to rest. Rachel Pollack offers an interesting opinion of the position of the swords in her book Tarot Wisdom, Spiritual Teaching and Deeper Meanings. She believes that the purpose of the swords is to heal him by activating his three chakras. The far right sword is pointing to his third eye, which is the psychic or intuitive opening. The middle sword is pointing to his throat chakra, which is all about communication. And the sword on the left is pointing to his solar plexus and activating deep knowledge. I like this explanation because it shows how healing is happening. Pam Richards, in her book Understanding Tarot, has a slightly different interpretation of the three swords. She believes that the sword on the right demonstrates that his thoughts are affected and, because the swords line up with his eyes, indicate that he has witnessed a painful truth. The middle sword hangs over his heart, which shows he has painful emotions. And the sword on the left, which is over his solar plexus chakra, shows him to be feeling insecure and off balance. The sword below the knight shows that, if needed, he can react quickly and still get up and fight. He can grab the other three swords if needed. I'm not an expert on knights, but it made me wonder why he would need more than one sword. However, if you look at the next card, the Five of Swords, you'll see that he is actually holding three swords, so I guess you could have more than one. As a metaphor, I believe that the three hanging swords mean that we can pick up our problems at any time and go back to our previous way of being. This card can also represent feeling ostracized. Here's an example from my life about my experience with deep healing. 2023 was a very difficult year for me. I had 4 surgeries. In the summer, my immune system was trashed when I got Lyme disease, and also a couple of weeks later, I ended up with COVID twice, all of which left me with ongoing medical issues. I had some orthopedic problems and a lot of family stress. I'd shut down my coaching business at the end of 2022 because I knew that one of the surgeries was going to have a long recovery. The other surgeries were a surprise. So it was a year about rest and recovery, and I spent much of my recovery time immersed in tarot. Honestly, it was kind of embarrassing to tell people I wasn't working, and it was hard not to be frustrated with how slowly my body was healing. And then one day in mid-November 2023, almost a year after my health issues started, I woke up and realized that my energy was back. It was like a switch that had been turned back on. That's when I started this YouTube channel. I don't think I would have gotten here if I'd forced myself to just soldier onward. Sometimes we just have to be okay with resting and letting ourselves heal. When the Four of Swords appears in a reversed position, it can signify that you have recovered from an illness, that you have figured things out, that you have gained clarity over your situation or discovered a different perspective, that you are restless or can't rest. Look at the positions of the sword. The points are ready to stab you, and it doesn't look very restful. It can mean that you are exhausted and burnt out. You need to slow down and take a break. That you are feeling cut off from other people, or you are falling on your sword. If you are not familiar with this expression, it refers to the fact that Roman soldiers, when they were faced with defeat or dishonor, would kill themselves by falling on their sword. In modern day, it generally means that you resign from your position due to failure or because you've done something wrong. Finally, it can mean that you are returning to activity after a period of rest. Here's an example of the reversed Four of Swords from my life about returning to activity after a period of rest. Prior to COVID making me afraid of being in crowds, I would visit the Omega Institute for a week in the summer. This is a retreat center located on 250 beautiful wooded acres in the Hudson Valley area of upstate New York, where they have amazing teachers and holistic studies programs. As a busy self-employed mom, it was such an exquisite break and a chance to focus on myself without the distractions of day-to-day life. The hard part was always when the retreat ended and I had to come home, starting with a stressful drive from what is basically wilderness through crazy traffic through the outskirts of New York City to my home on Long Island. That is the experience of the reversed Four of Swords. I'm sure that the knight was relaxed and connected with spirit. And then he comes home to the Five of Swords, which, as you can see on the screen, is essentially a battle. Regardless of what happened next, I'm sure that being centered from his period of rest and relaxation allowed him to cope. Here are some questions to help you connect with the Four of Swords. Do you make time to be alone, to rest and rejuvenate? Or do you resist taking a break? How do you cope with stress? What keeps you awake at night? Do you accept that deep healing requires rest? Or are you the kind of person that pushes forward regardless of how your body is functioning? Do you connect with spirit during periods of rest and relaxation? Are you quick to pick up your swords when you are resting? In other words, do you struggle letting go of the problems that are hindering you? So I hope that this video has given you a good look into the Four of Swords. Please join me for the next video, which is the Five of Swords.